D&D is a very interesting game. It is definitely something, I would say. But how can we make the game better, Okami? Oh, I'm looking the wrong way. Because I mixed up the yeah, you're over there.
I know a large part of D&D is the magic in it.
Yes.
Granted, I'm sure there are some people out there who, I mean, obviously there are some classes that don't use magic at all, and I'm sure there are even some masterfully crafted campaigns that don't include magic at all.
And what if I told you that we have had some very creative people who are able to create spells for us today?
Fantastic.
Hello, all you people, past, present, and future. Welcome to our first, I guess, well, technically the first D&D video that we've done, but just like the one that goes more into depth about the game and express our creativity. Today, I'm asking people to create not just spells, but asking for cantrips in particular. Now, for those of you who are just getting into D&D or don't know what it is, cantrips are essentially level 0 spells you can cast infinite amount of times as long as you meet the conditions. And, well, today, we've got a few for you today. I mean, some of them very weird, some of them very interesting, and some of them, yeah, it's there. So, Okami, would you please go ahead and tell these nice folks what we're judging these cantrips based by? And keep in mind, these are our personal opinions. We will give our thoughts on them. We are not exactly professionals, let's just say, but we do have knowledge of the game and its mechanics, and we can give our insight as to the spells and how they work.
My personal criteria for them will be usefulness will be one. I mean, we all like a good joke cantrip here and there, but excuse me, basing these on how likely I would be to pick them for a character. And so usefulness will be one, flavor will be another one. I like a good balance of mechanic and flavor in my D&D game, and I think it's important to have some nice flavorfulness in a cantrip and spell.
Yeah, for me, what I'm looking for is a combination of balance. How balanced is this spell? Whether for the powerful, the not so powerful, is it going to break the game, or is it so underwhelming? The second one is utility. How can this be used in a variety of situations? Not just in combat, but out of combat as well. My third criteria is roleplay, because, I don't know if you noticed, Dungeons & Dragons is a role-playing game. You need to role... Yeah, exactly. A revolutionary concept. So, if we can explore the role-playing aspects of these spells, then for me, I'm going to grade them based off that. And we're going to do that from a scale of 1 to 10, and then we'll average out the scores between the two of us. This one, in my opinion, it's 10 out of 10. It's too perfect. I mean, it's too good for this world. We've got our very own KeyToDarkness. I mean, he's an expert at D&D creations.
Love that guy.
Yeah, I know. He's such an amazing guy. And people have said recently that his voice is so elegant. But his spells, or I should say my spell, is called Shock and Shiver. It is a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action, requires verbal and somatic components with an instantaneous duration. You throw a spark of frozen energy at a creature that you see within range. Make a range... Oh, I forgot to put the range in. Oops. The range, I would say, is like 60 feet. I guess that's kind of like the standard for like these minor cantrips. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d6 lightning damage at the start of the target's next turn. If they take damage from this spell, they must make a Constitution saving throw, or take 1d6 cold damage. This spell's lightning damage increases by 1d6 when you reach level 5. The cold damage increases by 1d6 at level 11, and then both the lightning and cold damage increases again by 1d6 each at level 17, or I would say a total of 3d6 per damage type. Now, for me personally, I kind of like the idea of mixing elements, and like with this, you get a little bit of shock and a little bit of frozen. It's not extremely overpowered, I will say, because one, you still need to make the attack roll against the target. Two, they need to make the Constitution saving throw, in order to get that extra damage. And even if, if you don't hit, don't get the damage. So that's kind of my justification for, the balancing of this. But
even though it feels a little bit powerful for a cantrip, maybe a first level spell, but to be able, because here's the thing, say you do indeed miss your attack roll, or they make their Constitution saving throw, you can just continually cast this spell until you hit.
You can say that about Firebolt and Acid Splash, and I'm pretty sure Acid Splash is cantrip. It's been a while since I've read up on the spells. But you can...
That's fair.
Yeah, I made this in comparison to, say, like Firebolt, where you do need to make the attack, and Firebolt does more damage, on average, more or less, and again, there's that Constitution saving throw you need to make, because there are still a lot of enemies with high Constitution, like a high, I don't know word for that. Word. Speak, Claude. Word. But, you have to make a save on top of hitting the target. So, while it does seem powerful at the surface, most of the time you're either hitting for the base damage, which is pretty low anyway. It's kind of like on par. Like, it will deal less than a Ray of Frost, if it does hit and if it does make the save. And so if it doesn't make the save, yeah, you get both damage types. But say that an enemy is resistant to cold anyway, you'll be taking half damage anyway, from that cold damage. So, again, try to balance it out a little bit. I would say, yeah, maybe it could be a first level spell, but if that was the case, I probably wouldn't have, like, the level increase die or whatever the case may be and just say, like, per spell slot. Overall, I'm going to give my own cantrip at least a 7 out of 10. Roleplay-wise, it's not going to do too much. It's mostly for combat as well, but I can see a lot of fun things happening. Like, say a cheeky wizard wants to, like, I don't know, cause a little bit of mischief with a little bit of electricity and a little bit of frost, just like have the best of both worlds, You want a shotgun shiver? There you go. But
I can definitely see this being a fun little prank between a high-level party where the 3d8 or 3d6, would not do too much damage. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10? Wow, okay, you're giving me a lot of credit.
But I do mean flavor-wise. I like the idea that you can dampen the spell so that it doesn't do any actual damage, but instead just is like a little static shock.
So we can say, like, compared to the two, like 7.5 out of 10?
I think so.
I think so. I think I did a pretty decent job. And when we say 7 out of 10, a 5 for me is, you're on point, you got what you wanted to do out of the way. 7 out of 10 means that we are impressed, it could be better, but at the same time, it is above average. We can see a lot of potential in a spell like this, and we, like that creativity, and of course, 10 out of 10 means perfect spell, we love it. I think we would think that it will have a whole bunch of roleplay potential in the future, and that this might spark, no pun intended in this case, so like more creativity in these kind of things, which that's what we're looking for, or at least on my end. This is actually from one of our D&D players that we play alongside with. His name is Garrett, and his D&D spell is called Crescendo. Crescendo. As a casting time of 1 action, a range of 60 feet, and the target is any non-living object capable of repeatedly making noise, i.e. a bell, slamming door, musical instrument, etc., etc. Verbal and somatic components, duration 8 hours. Wow, okay. Again, this is the first time I'm seeing this because this is my initial reaction, Garrett, if you're watching in the future. But the effect. Choose a required circumstance. Okay. The target will repeatedly make noise if when specified circumstance is met. So, without even reading the rest, this reminds me a lot of the contingency spell in a lot of ways, where you like fulfill a certain condition to have the spell activate at that moment. So I'm kind of reminded of that. The sound can be as quiet or as loud as you specify and can follow a specific rhythm if you desire. The sound continues for as long as you can specify, or up to 1 hour. Wait a minute. As long as you can specify. So it's anywhere between an hour to 8 hours? Am I reading that properly?
I believe so.
Okay, that's pretty cool, I would say. I can't imagine, like, I haven't even read the rest yet, but just imagine just like a whole bunch of slamming doors for 8 hours at a time, and no concentration either. You could just have it just boom, boom, boom.
I don't think that's quite what it is, though. It's more, well, it would be if the condition was met, but I think it's more saying, like, say you were going to sleep and you went to set an alarm in case someone approached your party while you were sleeping. This alarm spell, Crescendo, would last for 8 hours. So maybe no one shows up, but if they do, then you'll have the bell ringing or the door slamming.
So in that case, it's kind of like a cantrip version of the alarm spell then, right? You can set the circumstance as something like, an enemy approaches our camp to make chimes warn you of an ambush. If you are a bard or something, you can... if you're a bard or something, you can also set it to, I start playing a song to have drums play a beat for you. You can also use it for trickery. If you know someone needs to be somewhere at a specific time, you can use you can cause church bells to ring early, giving them a false impression of the time. Or have a door on one side of a guarded dungeon slam shut on the condition that you reach the other side of the dungeon to give guards the wrong idea about where you are and draw them there. So, I like the idea of this, where it's not just used as like the alarm spell, like I said before, but like it can be used for distraction as well as even some minor role-playing thing. I imagine, if I'm reading the spell correctly, imagine like you have like some drums nearby that have like a minor floating enchantment. You cast a spell on each and every one of them to have like a marching band right behind you. I think that's a pretty fun thing for a bard to do. Or in other cases, like the distraction part, like drawing guards nearby. I guess you can say like spells like minor illusion to an extent can do the same thing.
But the thing is, this can be set in advance. Yeah,
like I said, kind of like the contingency spell that I said earlier, where you could just like set the conditions of the activation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trick your other party members into thinking that you are being attacked by a wild animal or something. Non-living object capable of making noise. Okay, well maybe not the animal part. So maybe like the clanging of swords, like make it sound like there's a battle in the distance, or let's just say like the sounds of, I guess, boulders rolling down a hill, like to scare some nearby travelers, or ascended a mountain or something. There's so much roleplay potential with this. And like I said, it's very creative, Garrett. I honestly do like this spell, and I would say for its balance, utility, and roleplay potential, I'm going to give this a solid. This is hard, because I'm just trying to properly understand the spell, and if we're talking about this, I want to give this a good 10 out of 10, you know?
I agree. It's very well thought out. And I find it to be very balanced as well.
Yeah, there's just so much you can do with this spell.
That's the big thing I look for in a cantrip. I mean, it is good, I believe, to have the little damage-dealing cantrips for if your wizard's all out of other options or whatnot. But I believe what makes a really good cantrip is versatility. A cantrip should be able to do a lot more. It should not be a one-trick pony. You should be able to do several things with a cantrip, and this fits that build perfectly.
Yeah, so Garrett, hey, good job, my dude. I mean, I'm actually interested in seeing what you do in future videos when we like do other topics and such. So, hey, good for you. You said you gave this a what?
I'm also giving it a 10 out of 10.
Alright, so hey, Garrett, you got a 10 out of 10. Good job, my dude. You have exceeded expectations. Okay, we also got one from the Astral 39. This spell is actually called Orbit. So the Astral 39 says that he thinks it's an evocation or conjuration. Well, we'll see what it is. Casting time 1 action. Okay. Verbal and somatic components. Duration 10 minutes or an hour. Maybe I think he means concentration, but let's say no to that yet. Okay, fair enough. So not sure on the duration. Hey, that's fine. You know, like we'll read it, see what it does. You create an invisible force around you in which you can place up to 2 items at a time, which orbit around you. Items placed in that area take a bonus action to switch with another item. When you drop an item and your item limit isn't met, it starts orbiting around you. If you placed it there, you may only place items in your orbit which are up to a small size. So, when I see item limit, I think he's talking about the encumbrance rule, because while we don't use the encumbrance rules in our games, I know that like if you're going based off of the book, there are like weight limits. So maybe
I think by item limit he meant the 2 item limit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just the wording's a little bit weird, but we'll say that that's the case. So that way, because when I'm reading this first paragraph, I'm thinking artificer. An artificer always needs some kind of tool, whether it be smithing tool or, you know, just like some like wrenches or whatnot, depending on the campaign. Just cast this spell, have like 2 or 3 different wrenches around you, so that way you could just like grab it, you know, you could work on your thing and then just put it back, grab something else, and then I like that potential. And
it could also work for a wizard, you know, bustling about their wizard's tower, and they maybe drop their quill, just let it float around them, or a light source that they always have on them. Although they'd probably have like dancing lights or a light cantrip, but still.
Yeah. I mean, even with the light spell, I imagine, let's just say you don't choose dancing light, and you cast the light spell on an object. Then you cast orbit to have it like float around you. Not only would you have like a floating light around you, yes, dancing lights probably would do the same thing, but, you know, just like the combination of the 2 spells. And like, what if you don't have access to dancing light? I mean, I highly doubt it, considering most caster classes have both, but still, I like the idea that, you know, orbit doesn't seem very powerful at first. I mean, there's still a lot more, and I'm just going based off of like role-playing potential right now, but so far I'm liking this.
When you orbit more than 3 items at a time, you count as lightly obscured for ranged attacks made against you.
Whoa!
Either by making a successful attack roll against AC 16 or a successful DC 16 dexterity acrobatics check.
Okay, without going any further, I'm sorry to cut you off, Okami, but lightly obscured. If I remember the different rulings, I could be mistaking it for cover, but lightly obscured, I think, means, actually, I can probably look it up real quick. Like they're like behind cover or something like that. Lightly obscured, such as that. Oh no, excuse me. I'm thinking of something different. Okay, in a lightly obscured area, such as dim light, patchy fog, or moderate foliage, creatures have disadvantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. Okay, if you have 3 or more objects, enemies can sort of see you, sort of not.
I think what they meant is that it's harder to hit you with a ranged attack because you have multiple objects floating around you.
So, okay.
I think a disadvantage. So I think it'd be better to say that ranged attacks against you have disadvantage.
Yeah, and not to mention either by making a successful attack roll against an AC 16, or a successful DC 16 dexterity acrobatics check. I might be confusing this a little bit. Does the object have 16 AC, or do they need to make a 16 dexterity check, you know, to hit you? I'm getting very confused about that, to be quite honest.
I'm not entirely sure what they mean by that either.
Because I know some objects, depending on where you look, have like an AC value, I guess. I mean, I don't remember any off the top of my head, but like say if you like break a wall of ice, because I know some spells create walls of ice and they have hit points and armor class. So maybe this is something similar where the objects turn into like these minor shields that you can hit, because if that's the case, this is already a pretty good spell. A little overpowered, but I like the idea of these items, like, giving you sort of like a temporary shield, if that makes any sense. However...
I do feel that 16 is a bit high.
Yeah, it really is a bit high. I would say it would probably have to scale based off of the spellcasting class, or even like the armor class of like yourself. Let's just say yourself for this instance. Then that seems a little bit better, because I can see like artificers, wizards having this spell, and they don't typically have high armor class aside from using mage armor. So I would say, all right.
A creature can use an action to seize one of the items. The spell lets you orbit more than 2 items when you reach higher levels. 3, at which can be bigger things like weapons that lack the heavy or two-handed property, and shields. You don't benefit from a shield orbiting you unless its descriptions state otherwise.
Oh, good.
Save DC 18 at 5th level, 4 items at the time, or 1 weapon with a heavy or two-handed property. Save DC 20 at 11th level.
What?
5 smaller items or 1 item with the heavy or two-handed property, and 1 smaller item. Save DC.
Yeah, I'm seeing all of these DC saves. I mean,
at 17.
But taking out the context for the DC 22s are near impossible in early to mid game play. I mean, I think even tier 3 play, 22 is still pretty high, you know?
It is DC, to be fair, it is DC 22 at level 17.
Yeah.
That being said, I think this would benefit more from it being a leveled spell.
Yeah, but...
This is a very powerful
yeah.
Perhaps you split it into 2 spells. You have Orbit, which is the Cantrip, which is just the very basic... Say you can float 2 to 3 items, small items at a time around you. And then you have a more powerful orbit. I don't know what to call it. But that grants you all these benefits here.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be so picky about the saving throw stuff. Okay, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I have Arcus Stormcrow, one of our big bads of our campaigns. Like his old character sheet, his spell DC is 21, but he also has 24 intelligence, which boosts that up, and he's a wizard. Mm-hmm. So this spell has a DC that's higher than a level 22 wizard, or 20 wizard, excuse me. So that that is, I know it's like 17th level, but for me that's pretty high.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, if it's more powerful than a level 20 wizard spell save, even with like beyond better intelligence, then yeah, definitely a little powerful. I would say maybe scale back the DC. Again, Astral, if you're watching, if you would be so kind as to explain a little bit further what you mean by DC in the comments, so that way we'll have a better understanding of what you mean. But I guess as we're reading as is, I think it's a little overpowered. I do like the idea of having items hover around you for certain scenarios, you know?
Definitely not a bad spell.
Yeah.
It's just a little too much for a cantrip.
Yeah, and it definitely has a lot of roleplay potential as well. Like, say you have, like, maybe 2 party members that are conscious, maybe the others are knocked out, but you have all these things that you need to carry, like, say, giant keystones or something. Use the spell to just, like, hover around you so that way you can figure out what to do and, like, you know, get out of, like, a trap or something. Or maybe you can use this, like, as a party trick as well. Imagine a bard picking up this spell, having so many different instruments, and with Minor Illusion playing at least each and every one of them. Again, there's so much role potential. Oh, okay. Ooh.
Consider, it says small objects, and if I remember, well, I mean, they're not technically objects, but if I remember correctly, gnomes and halflings fall into the small size category.
Yes, but
so imagine you're just juggling some gnomes and halflings around you.
Honestly, I do like the idea of I think the proper term for gravity-based magic is graviturgy or something like that. There's not too many things like this spell, and so maybe with a little bit of tweaking, I would definitely have fun with something like this. The rough idea is that you have multi-items at the ready, so you don't take 2 actions to use multiple things. For example, an artificer with all kinds of tools floated around him, like I said before, yeah. Or for a fighter to have a few weapons in reach without using 1 or 2 rounds to use another weapon, like melee and ranged. Now, at least for our games, the way we've done it is that you get 1 free action per, or 1, I think it's called like free action. It's not exactly like your standard action. It's more like you can switch out weapons once, or like once per round of combat, or like say something to your party members. You know, a free action.
Smack talk the
Smack talk the DM. You're going to smack talk the DM.
God, if you want.
Yeah, but
I mean, to be fair, the DM is playing the bad guy.
That
so
is true.
There you go.
That is true. But yeah, when it comes to fighters, they're either gonna have, like, I mean, they can just switch out to their bow using their free action. Anyway, I mean, I get what you're saying, but when is a fighter gonna have a sword, a spear, and a bow just hovering around them at all times? You know.
Not to mention, only the Eldritch Knight would have access to the cantrip.
Exactly, and I don't know if there's any other fighter class that has access to magic. I could be wrong, but I mean, I'm not...
They could take magic initiate.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Any class can technically have this spell, which it can be very good in certain scenarios. But as it is, yeah, let's see. Just rough idea of multiple items so you don't have to ready 2 actions to do multiple things. Well, here's the thing. Fighters have action surge. They can already do 2 things at once. And yes, it uses a resource, but as a fighter, you will want to slash and, you know, pierce with arrows, then using this spell in combat, you know, wasting an action just to hover a couple weapons. Now, I imagine using this spell before combat, but a lot of times, you're not going to know that you're getting into combat unless you are prepared for, like, an ambush or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I would say, given what we talked about with Astral's spell, the balancing is a little bit wonky. I do like the idea of this utility spell, you know, specifically for artificers and wizards who want to have their components at the ready. But with the clarification, it might be higher for me, but I want to give this at least a 5 out of 10. Now, keep in mind, a 5 out of 10 is not bad by any means in my book. It's just, you're doing what you need to do, you know, with this cantrip itself. But there's a lot that needs to be changed, not just for balancing wise, but just to probably make sense in, you know, just a roleplay aspect. At least, just minor. So, what are your final thoughts on this?
I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10.
7? Oh, wow.
I do think it's a really neat spell, and I think it has some great potential. It should probably be, like, I understand making it a cantrip for its utility purpose. Like, who would want to burn a spell slot just to hover a few items around you, no matter how helpful it might be?
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the thing. It's pretty darn helpful. So I think making it a first level spell that can become more useful based on what spell level you cast it at would benefit it greatly.
Yeah. Alright. So I would say let's meet in the middle and make this a 6 out of 10. Which, again, it is not a bad thing, in fact, and this will make it an above average spell. Like, a little bit of above average, but I would say, Astral, this is a very creative spell. And I can see this with a little bit of tweaking, and maybe make it into a level 1 spell, which maybe in the future we'll do like a level 1 spell version of this kind of video. But still, not bad for your first attempt, you know? We gotta give you props for that, my dude, you know?
Indeed.
Yeah, and I might even tweak this if, you know, with your permission, of course. I might even tweak this for my games. Like, I have an artificer in my game, not to go on a rant, but an artificer that might actually like to use this spell when she's working. So, hey, you sparked creativity in me, so you know what? I think I'll bump my score to a 6 out of 10 as well, you know? Now, because of that inspiration that you have given me. I think that's fair, right?
Beautiful.
Alright, so 6.5 out of 10. Congratulations, Astral. We didn't have too many spells submitted to us this time around, so to cap things off, we're gonna go in D&D Beyond, because I actually found this, I thought it was funny. Again, no shade to the person who created this, but this is something that I like. It's unbalanced as anything, but we're gonna grade it anyway. Absorb abilities.
Level Cantrip. Casting time, bonus action. Area range, touch. Excuse me. Components, verbal. Duration, instantaneous. School, necromancy. No attack and no damage. Upon killing an enemy, you have the ability to absorb one racial ability from the enemy you have killed. You must be the one that has killed that has the ability you want. Assign numbers to each ability the enemy you killed has, and then roll a dice. Dice size is determined by amount of abilities. The number the dice lands on is the ability you will obtain. If you already have the ability, you do not get to re-roll for another ability. If the DM is cool with it, you can use the ability twice, or get a proficiency bonus with it. For example, using a Dragonborn's breath weapon twice without cooldown.
You know, again, I know what this guy's going for, because this reminds me very much of the Blue Mage, which, Okami, just to give context for that, Blue Mages in Final Fantasy allow you to absorb enemy abilities, and sometimes even traits, depending on which game you're looking for. And I can see a lot of it in this, but just imagine in a D&D sense. You're a level 1 party, you end up coming across, say, something with, if I'm reading this, a racial trait. A lot of monsters are not going to have racial traits unless, you know, they're like specific on that. So, okay, an early level enemy that is commonly used, I would say a goblin.
Even though it's very overpowered as a cantrip, it does have a lot of potential that I will expand upon after your goblin.
Of course, and I'll probably give my expansion as well. So, the goblins, at least the monster manual goblins, they really don't have any racial traits per se. The only thing that they have is nimble escape. The goblin can take the disengage action or the hide action as a bonus action on each of its turns. So, just imagine for creatures like this. You kill it, you have this cantrip, you absorb their nimble escape, and there's no limit as to how many times you can do this. There is no cap on how many abilities you can take. For each monster you kill, you can take their racial ability and use it for your own. Again, not a bad idea in concept, but execution, let's just say later down, you fight against, say, a red dragon, and you end up killing it somehow. And, you know, as soon as it dies, because the implication here is that, like, it has to die, upon killing the enemy. So you need to use your you need to use your bonus action immediately after you kill the dragon to potentially absorb this thing's, you know, fire breath, or dragon breath, or no, well, they say dragonborn, but still, just imagine absorbing a dragon's fire breath.
Imagine absorbing its true sight.
Or even legendary resistances.
My god. And, like, here's the concept here. This is obviously a very overpowered cantrip, but it could be a good plot device.
Oh, yeah, like,
imagine you ride into town, and the big city, and there's whispers of serial killer about, and no one's really sure who he's targeting, because it's all different races, different people who have no real connection to one another. Mm-hmm. And once you've captured, cornered, fought the guy, he reveals that he has the ability to absorb all of this. And he's going around killing the different races in order to absorb the different abilities. In the end, making him one of the most powerful beings in the entire world.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see a pretty good campaign be created from this. But the ability itself would definitely have to be toned down if the players end up getting it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's probably, I can see it being an ability coming from like a warlock's patron.
Yeah. Or
some very powerful entity granting this boon.
Yeah, it is a necromancy spell, so there are a few classes that could benefit from this. But if I had to balance it out, I would say 1 racial ability for casting, and you can only have 1 racial ability per day. Now, granted, and just like have like a DC. If you make it the DC, you get that racial ability, and it only lasts until the end of the day. But you can only have that 1. You know.
Yeah, or alternatively, something similar to that. You can only absorb 1 racial ability, and let's say it lasts like a week. And you can't use this ability until the acquired racial ability has worn out.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, if I had to rate this ability, I would give it... honestly, mostly for the roleplay potential. I mean, there's so many things you can do with this, like you said, Okami, like, this can be a very good plot point. But mechanics-wise, it's not balanced, and the utility is through the roof, but not in a good way. So for me, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. And that's, I probably will bump it up maybe to 4 out of 10, you know, just like, or maybe even 5 out of 10 if it were properly balanced. But at, you know, rules as written, if we're going based off that, I'm giving it a 3 out of 10.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10, simply for the roleplay potential it has.
So,
it's not something you should just give your players willy-nilly. It needs some balance, but all of the potential it has is very juicy.
Oh, yes it does. And I'd say meeting halfway, 4 out of 10, a little below average. But I would say you've got the idea right there. If you work with your DM to see how you can balance it, maybe you might inspire him to end up creating this unique boss that has this ability to absorb racial traits. Because honestly, if I weren't planning out my current campaign with you, Okami, I probably would introduce this spell, but
good God, no.
I'm
giving him ideas, people.
Yes, give me ideas, people. We love the ideas. Overall, I do like the creativity that each and every one of you that has given us. And, you know, just being able to... Don't get me wrong, when we critique these spells, we have no ill intentions against any of you. In fact, if you're brave enough to send it to us, we are brave enough to read it and give you our thoughts on it. Good or bad, we appreciate you sending them in anyway, you know?
Very much so.
Mm-hmm. And it's just... You guys have the potential. You guys have a lot of potential, and if there's one thing I tell my players all the time, is that if you can spark creativity in others, then they might even inspire you one day as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Lord knows, I've gotten some inklings of ideas from this.
Yeah, exactly, and as a DM, I have a couple of ideas myself. Not necessarily story-breaking ones, mind you, but...
Always a scary thought when your DM says that.
Mwahaha. But more or less, that's pretty much the video, guys. And honestly, I've had fun doing this. Okami, I hope you had fun doing this as well.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, and honestly, if this video gets enough, you know, likes and people want to see more of this, we're willing to do other things. And I'm thinking the next video we can do is maybe magic items. I think that will be fun. Just to see, yeah, just to see what people come up with. Yes, and like I said, I'll throw my hat in the ring this time as well, you know, like we did with this video. I mean, of course it's got to be a 10 out of 10 item. I'm one of the judges. I have the say in that matter. But again, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video, submitting your ideas. You all are completely awesome, and we hope to see you again for the next video. If you did enjoy the video, you know what you need to do, Okami? Or everyone else watching?
What's that, Glug?
Well, you need to hit that like button and press the little button that says subscribe. I mean, it's a very special button, you know? It just goes to show you that you like the content and want to see more from us. Yeah, that's more or less the video. I don't know how to end this, but stay classy, stay beautiful. Most importantly, Don't forget to annoy your DM with these spells.
Take care, lovelies. Have a wonderful day.
You too. See you guys.